And my feet don't touch me.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us here today. We're following a great conversation touching on AI, manufacturing, and national security, which lends well to this conversation we're about to have. So to start off, I can't possibly do you all justice. So I'd like to have you take a moment and introduce each of yourselves, and then we'll get into the discussion. So, Stephen, you want to start us off?
Sure. Thank you, first of all, for inviting us to the panel. This was a really spectacular opportunity, and we're thrilled to be here in Pittsburgh. My name is Stephen Moss. I'm a senior policy advisor. I work for the National Security Commission on Emerging Biotechnology, which is a mouthful, but we serve as an advisory body to Congress on the future of biotechnology.
Hi, I'm Brennan Sellner. I'm the Vice President of Engineering at Bioforge. My background is actually in computer science and robotics. I'm only about a year and a half into the biotech world, but I'll talk more about Bioforge later.
And I'm the Glenn DeVries Dean of Carnegie Mellon's College of Science. My name's Barbara Shin Cunningham. I'm an electrical engineer by background, but I'm an auditory neuroscientist.
And I'm Mike Paglia, the Chief Technology Officer at Elevate Bio. So I've been with the company from the beginning and lead the operations, the technical teams for our facility in Waltham, as well as what we're building here in Pittsburgh.
Thank you. Really excited to dig into all the amazing work you all are doing. But to start, Stephen, I'd like to kick off with you. You know, Congress saw this time as so important in the evolution of the biotech industry that they created the National Security Commission on Emerging Biotech. Can you take a minute to tell us why it's such an important time and the work that you all are doing in this space?
Of course, happy to answer that question. So the National Security Commission on Emerging Biotechnology, I'm just going to call it the commission from now on, was formed as a part of the National Defense Authorization Act, or the NDAA of 2022. This is the big bill that Congress does every year to tell the DoD what its responsibilities are. There are a lot of these types of commissions, especially for a wide range of topics, but particularly on emerging technologies. There was one on AI, there was one on cyber, and so we're sort of the next in line related to biotechnology. And Congress decided that put us together and put together a set of commissioners. We currently have 11 commissioners. It's all, including 4 members of Congress, bipartisan in both the House and the Senate. Our chair is Senator Young from Indiana. And so we have perspectives from across the aisle to be able to guide our own, the advice that we give. And so I think to your question, Congress really recognized the importance of biotechnology in this particular moment for a number of reasons, but specifically related to manufacturing and the opportunity to secure supply chains, and thinking as biotechnology beyond just medicine, but also for production of chemicals and materials, and a lot of different other aspects that I'll get into a little bit later. But so with that in mind, we spent the past 2 years talking to a lot of people, coming to conferences like this, getting input in various ways, and we produced a report in April that had our set of recommendations on what Congress should do to ensure that the U.S. maintains a lead in biotechnology. And I'll say in that report, there's a lot of recommendations. I'm happy to dive into any of them, and I think we'll get into some of them during this panel, but some of the overarching themes of why biotechnology, why now, included the fact that it's converging with AI. And with the convergence of AI and biotechnology, you see this opportunity that we haven't had in the past, where all of a sudden we are able to accelerate the pace of innovation. And so now is the time to act on biotechnology. There is also a big component of the report that's related to competition with strategic adversaries, and noting that countries like China, who used to be fast followers and not be in the lead, are starting to take the lead in various areas of biotechnology. So if we want to have an impact on the global stage, as we have in the past, we need to be at the forefront of technology development and biotechnology, and where it converges with AI. And so I'll stop there to the extent of why now.
Thank you. I would encourage you all to check out this report. I have read it front to back, and it is actually a phenomenal overview of biotech as a national security concern and really where the future of this industry is going and what's of interest. And Stephen, maybe to stay with you for just a minute, I mean, when I think biotech, I don't immediately go to defense. Can you talk a little bit about how biotech is actually related to national security and how you see those two together?
Yeah, of course. It's a great question, and it's something we get a lot. I think, as I mentioned earlier, when people talk about biotechnology, they typically think of pharmaceutical industry, which is totally fair. And I think a lot of people coming into conversations with us assume that was our purview. But if you think more broadly about the national security implications of biotechnology, then you get into conversations that primarily focus on biological weapons. And we wanted to shift the focus to say, yes, biological weapons are something that are important to think about from a federal government point of view, but we also want to think about other aspects of national security, economic security, and supply chain resiliency. Important aspects that biotechnology has an answer for and has a response to. So, in a lot of the aspects of the work that we did, we took time to show examples where biotechnology is being used for purposes of defense to help ensure that the military has strength in various areas where they haven't previously. We have a lot of really great examples of this, and just to give a couple, we think a lot about kind of on the front lines and being able to manufacture quickly or manufacture something on demand. And one of the things that we've heard different groups working on is the opportunity to take these big biomanufacturing plants. You think of like brewing beer, like giant vats of organisms producing material, and condense it down to a backpack so that someone on the front lines could have the opportunity to have sort of a fermenter and carry a fermenter with them to have on-demand supplies. There's also something that came out of DARPA, which is the Department of Defense's innovative programs arm, where they have shelf-stable blood on demand. So if we have an example of it, it's kind of like a glow stick. You crack it, and then it provides shelf-stable blood that you can use in the field. It's good for austere environments, and the hope there is that you have the opportunity to change what's called the golden hour, which is once a soldier is injured, they have about an hour before they need to get medical treatment into theoretically maybe a golden day. So there are a lot of really neat opportunities that biotechnology can be applied toward defense, and that's not even. And I haven't even started to talk about kind of assuring supply chains. So the production of chemicals and materials where we typically rely on other countries and in many cases adversaries, but now we can hopefully onshore or reshore some of those critical chemicals and maybe even critical minerals components that are really important to manufacturing more broadly.
That's great. It's really good to know that at a federal bipartisan level, we're thinking about how to invest in and support these areas. Barb, turning to you, I know CMU has really been at the forefront of both applying AI to discovery tools, but also to how to improve biomanufacturing. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that drew me to CMU, actually, I was recruited here 8 years ago to now, or 7.5 years ago, to head the Neuroscience Institute. And what drew me was the expertise in AI, because discovery science, we're generating data at a volume that we can't analyze by hand the way we used to. We really need AI tools. That was the driving force for me to come to CMU to found the Neuroscience Institute. And AI is being used in all sorts of ways. And I don't mean large language models. I mean AI, artificial intelligence in a broader sense, using AI to make sense of huge volumes of data as a way of accelerating discovery. It's being done in every single science. In neuroscience, we're using it to drive innovation in neurotechnology. We're using it in chemistry to find good molecules that are good candidates for drugs, for genetic interventions. So it's used everywhere in every one of the sciences, because the sensors were generating so much data that these tools are really invaluable. So that's one place where it really intersects. And when it comes to biomanufacturing, we are very close sitting here to a $40 million investment that CMU made in a cloud lab, which is actually, if you hold up that report, it's one of the things that's mentioned in the report is needing to build a autonomous science network. NSF just released a new call for proposals. That's one of the things that was recommended that's actually happening now. And CMU is well poised to compete for that because of this facility that's right next door to us as we speak. And the idea there is to combine autonomous AI in generating hypotheses that then can be tested automatically, and combining it ultimately with robotics to make it so that people from all around the world can access these kinds of facilities, do repeatable experiments, make science accessible, but also do it at a scale and volume that is impossible otherwise. And it's really going to allow us to accelerate the discovery of chemicals and biologic agents in a way that we haven't been able to do before. And all of these things are really perfectly situated here, as we've heard already today. CMU, Pitt, the environment here is just rife with basic scientists making discoveries that are going to be the things that fuel the commercialization for tomorrow.
Thank you. That automated lab here in Bakery Square, if you all haven't seen it, it's phenomenal. It's a warehouse full of equipment that can be run autonomously, and just phenomenal what you're doing over there. So great example of applying AI in the life sciences. Mike, speaking of really incredible breakthroughs, Elevate Bio is doing a tremendous amount in the development of precision therapeutics and then the biomanufacturing there. But obviously in this space, the ability to create these and the precision and novelty that's enabling these new treatments also can be challenging to scale. How are you all tackling some of those challenges? And can you tell us a little bit about the investments that you're making here in Pittsburgh as well?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. The promise of these therapies is what makes them challenging. And so when we talk about advanced therapies, and especially in development and manufacturing, we're talking about cell therapies, gene therapies, mRNA therapies. So even in the report, they talk about sickle cell disease and potentially curing sickle cell disease through cell and gene therapy. So the type of work that we do at Elevate Bio is really we built the technology to support the industry for advancement of these types of therapies. Not only just manufacturing, from clinical to commercial manufacturing, but also the tools for our partners in the industry to achieve the development of those products. So platform approaches for manufacturing, development, and how we started was very unique compared to existing contract development manufacturing organizations in the past, as we built a highly digital infrastructure from the beginning. We've been at this for over 8 years now, and building that infrastructure from the start has really made a difference in how we can advance these programs commercially. So our facility in Waltham, Massachusetts is essentially our reference site for the development and manufacturing, and now we can scale that commercially, and we're doing it here in Pittsburgh, which is very exciting. Partnership with the University of Pittsburgh and the Mellon Foundation is something that we're really looking forward to bringing that technology and that infrastructure, as we heard on the last panel, really a life science hub for companies to build that technology that come out of the university and stay in Pittsburgh. Now there's a foundation here for advanced therapy manufacturing for the life sciences. The other thing that we provide are the tools to be able to develop those products. We have a company in Durham, North Carolina called Life Edit, and that works on gene editing components, so novel CRISPR enzymes that are proprietary to us, so we can license those products to companies And how that's advanced in the last 5 years has been tremendous through the advent, obviously, of the AI technology. We have Google up on the screen here, the techniques and the tools that we can not only harvest from the microbiome and developing those therapies and those enzymes, but now looking at synthetic approaches to developing those products as well, minimizing off-target effects, minimizing the risk of any safety events, looking at the potency of these, so really using those AI tools in development of the drugs and the design of the drugs as well. And lastly, what we do at the facility in Massachusetts that we're going to expand here in Pittsburgh is that digital infrastructure, as I spoke about before. Building in the efficiencies in development and manufacturing through the tools of AI. So, authoring SOPs, tracking KPIs, tracking manufacturing. The challenge with autologous cell therapies, advanced therapies, gene therapies is getting the product to the patient as rapidly as possible so the disease progression slows and you can hopefully have a curative event. So the idea is to make sure that the manufacturing, which is also oftentimes very complex, is done right the first time, but also done very quickly. And what comes with that is review of quality documentation and making sure that happens rapidly. So now with all the digital systems, electronic batch records, automation, and robotics, you can actually manufacture, and we spoke a little bit about the release testing, that you can get the product back to the patient as rapidly as possible. So all these new tools, technologies, these are the things that we evaluate at Elevate Bio to make a difference in the patient's lives as rapidly as we can.
Thank you. On the panel yesterday, we had a couple of Pittsburgh companies who are using AI platforms in therapeutics development, Peptologics and Avista. And one of the themes that came up was the increasingly how early you are interfacing with the manufacturing of these, because it's so complicated when you talk about the precision biologics. So having you all here as a CDMO in Pittsburgh is really going to open up the floodgates, I think, for our CGT industry here, which is great. Brennan, you're going to be in the same building, office mates, if you will, with Elevate Bio, and you all are also tackling many of the big challenges. Tell us a little bit about how you all are framing your goals and what you're doing at BioForge.
Sure. So BioForge is pretty new. We just started last year. But our goal is to enable breakthroughs in the manufacturing of precision medicines. I know we're not a bio crowd here, so a precision medicine is generally something that's either produced for a specific individual, like a CAR T cell therapy, or it might be something that's produced for a small, relatively small population. So these have great potential. There's a lot of news stories about deafness being cured, various diseases being addressed that couldn't be otherwise. And by the time you get to paragraph 3, you see the price tag, which is in the millions of dollars per dose. So what we're trying to do is make those treatments more affordable and more accessible, as well as helping to build up the biotech ecosystem in Pittsburgh that we've been talking about here. And we're doing that through a series of projects. Each of these, we're partnering with either a lab or an early stage startup to help them solve problems around manufacturing on the road to commercialization. So these projects you mentioned DARPA, they're sort of DARPA style. We have that in our DNA from our CEO, Ken Gabriel. And each has a fixed target in terms of time and budget, as well as deliverables that we're aiming for, so quantitative objectives. And BioForge contributes people and resources, the partner contributes people and resources, and we work together. So we're not a CDMO, we're not a CRO, we're not a funding agency, we're not a lot of things, but which is usually how I start that conversation. But what we are is a way to make advances in manufacturing and come up with new ways of building things and that can make these things much more affordable and progress. And each project will end either with a spin out of a new company to help build that ecosystem here with licensing of the technology, or it may not work, and that's fine. We're expecting 10 to 20% of our projects to fail, because if they don't, we're not stretching far enough. We're not looking for incremental improvement here. We're looking for orders of magnitude. So I think that's sort of how BioForge is structured. A quickie overview of, we have 3 projects currently in flight and some more in the pipeline. The first is a microneedle array project. That's a technology, it's a small patch with very thin short needles that is great for both skin cancer treatments, vaccine deployment, as well as cosmetics. So we're working with a spin-out of the University of Pittsburgh, where The goal there is to get the price down to the point where it would be applicable for vaccine distribution in the developing world. So that's a scaling issue and changing, like how do we make them more efficiently? The next project is AAV manufacturing. So AAVs are a viral vector that's used for delivery of gene therapy that has great potential, but the manufacturing process, as Mike alluded to, is expensive and complex. And most startups in that space have one shot. If their therapy doesn't work, they're out of money and they're out. That also means that smaller diseases aren't being addressed because it's not economically feasible. So we're looking at a potentially breakthrough approach there that would make the manufacturing much more reliable and significantly reduce the risk to increase both the diseases that can be addressed as well as the flexibility of these startup companies. And finally, we have Furnace, which is an mRNA brokerage service. This is bringing together mRNA designers, optimization tools, which I think we'll touch on later, as well as manufacturers to democratize access to mRNA, which is the underlying technology behind the COVID vaccines. So that, I think, has significant potential as we work to reduce the barrier to entry from a technological perspective, but also reduce the turnaround time and cost of manufacturing mRNA to really help that greatly expand as a tool of the future in terms of future treatments.
I think it's exciting that you're thinking about applying AI and different technologies both to the manufacturing itself, but also to the supply chain and the process inputs. So it's a great, all the different ways you all are thinking about that. Stephen, I want to come back to you for a little bit. We've talked about kind of applying AI in the basic discovery side of things as well as in biomanufacturing. Is the commission more focused on basic discovery or applied manufacturing? How are you all thinking about your recommendations and areas of focus?
Yeah. I think unsurprisingly, you'll find that it's balanced. You need both. I think over the course of today and this panel and yesterday and being here in Pittsburgh and hearing about the ecosystem here, it's a shining example of like the importance of both the basic research, the inputs from universities and different types of research organizations, but then also making sure that it works. So you can actually produce the end product. You can manufacture, because those are some of the key challenges that we found through our own work. I think we have we have a lot of recommendations that speak to both the early stage research and then also kind of opportunities for manufacturing and ensuring that we actually can manufacture and biomanufacture, I should say. I'll point to a couple things. The first is the grand challenges that we have written in the report. And similar to what Brennan was talking about related to kind of a DARPA style where there's, kind of points of success and ensuring that you're heading toward an end goal, we propose something similar. And we have grand challenges for both the basic research side, thinking about how do we make biology more predictably engineerable through various more specific challenges, but then also on the manufacturing side, thinking about how we make manufacturing more predictable, reliable, and efficient. And so then we split that into various components related to biomanufacturing as needed. And of course, the medical side, the cell and gene therapy side, is something that we think about as well. And that relates more to some other recommendations where we very specifically have infrastructure. We also propose infrastructure for both the manufacturing side. That includes like the testing out and being able to experiment with manufacturing, but also just ensuring that that companies have the ability to build that capacity in the United States. So we propose specifically on the manufacturing side opportunities through Department of Commerce and Department of Energy and other agencies for building that infrastructure that's so desperately needed because right now opportunities for scale-up testing are pretty minimal, and for scale-up experimentation are even more minimal. Providing those opportunities. And then on the basic research side, it should be no surprise that we also need some kind of shared infrastructure talked about cloud labs, and it's in the report, and we definitely thought about CMU as an example as we were writing the report, and Emerald Cloud Labs and all the groups that have worked on cloud labs already, and then we were really excited to see the NSF announcement as you mentioned, Barbara, and so that's one component of it. There's also components related to the Department of Energy National Labs, where they have amazing research capacity, but just ensuring that they use and have the opportunity to utilize that for biotechnology and even as it's combined with AI and autonomous systems and automated instrumentation, and ensuring that there are opportunities for all researchers to be able to access that technology. And then I'll say overall, and I'll end on kind of like an umbrella recommendation related to data, because you hear a lot about data. Everyone talks about data. If you're going to talk about AI, you're going to talk about data, and we recognize the same challenge. And biological data is particularly challenging because there's so many different types of it, and it's so scattered, and it's not standardized right now. So how do we fix all of that? We have some recommendations. But also we understand that there's a lot of work that needs to be done within the community as well, and so thinking about how to work with stakeholders from kind of like as we continue our own work. But on there.
I found the research, the grand challenges, really helpful in articulating what's of interest at the federal level. So for those of you all doing research, I would encourage you to look at them because it's a great roadmap for where there is interest and enthusiasm. I think the other thing that really came out of the report is how Pittsburgh's strengths intersect with many of your recommendations, and particularly our strengths around data-driven healthcare, as well as precision biologics and next-gen therapeutics, and the having two integrated health systems here in this region, along with two R1 universities, and the intersection of what's happening there in the development of the life sciences really found its way into many of the recommendations, us having strengths related to many of the recommendations. Building on that, Barb, I mean, this is changing so fast with the tools that we're bringing on. How do you see basic research changing due to AI, and what are you seeing over at CMU?
I mean, it's already changed. Everyone who's doing basic science really depends on AI at this point, given the volumes of the data that are being generated. And like I said earlier, you really need automated tools to make sense of that data in any real-time kind of, in a realistic time frame. And there are all sorts of examples. It's not just in biology. I mean, in physics, we have a physicist who works on the Hadron Collider, and they generate petabits of data per day, and in order that you can't store it all, you have to have AI to decide which moments of time to store rather than storing it all, because it's just the volume is too incredible. So it's being used in physics, it's being used in neuroscience, it's being used in biology, it's being used in chemistry, and there are examples of throughout. One of the things I think is really important to think about is getting lots of data might work for the Hadron Collider, but for a lot of biology, we don't have trillions of data points around. And I think basic science really can play a role then in constraining the problem and by building in what we know about basic physiological processes and biological processes, you can get away with less data to guide you, but still use AI in an automated way. And that's almost necessary given the complexities of the problems and the speed at which we want to attack them. Without that kind of built-in constraint, you would be unable to solve the problems because you would need more data than we have available. So I really would argue for a role of basic science and the kinds of stuff that people in the lab are doing today, powered by AI to make sense of what is large volumes of data, but what by itself isn't large enough without knowledge of the underlying constraints. So I feel like the basic scientist arguing for the importance of my own work, but I really believe that, and it really is about the data that you can generate and being guided by models and constraints in order to make it a solvable problem, but it's everywhere.
Mike and Brennan, I'm going to turn to you all. I mean, biomanufacturing is changing so fast right now. What do you see happening in the next 12 to 18 months? What are some of the breakthroughs that you're most excited about right now?
I guess there are probably two things for me. One is, well, since we're not a bio crowd, the really short version is that when you make RNA, it's made of a series of amino acids. Each amino acid can be spelled a number of different ways with the underlying nucleotides, A, G, C, T. And that results in a space where you can have the same amino acid sequence, but there are more ways to spell it than there are atoms in the universe raised to the sixth power for a short sequence. It gets crazy fast. So this is not a space you can automatically explore. There's a bunch of different objective functions you may want to use, in getting more on the AI side, where you may want to try to maximize manufacturability. Can we make it efficiently? Expression, is it efficiently produced in the body? And others. So you've got competing needs. You have a very expensive ground truth to collect, as Barb mentioned, and you have a dimensionality that is frankly insane. So I think this is a very interesting place where AI can be applied in this space. And there's a number of projects out there trying to do this. All of them are limited at the moment, and all of them are focused on particular objective functions or particular organisms, because to throw everything else into there, where you put it matters. So something's optimized for a human isn't going to be optimized for a mouse, all that kind of fun jazz. So that's, I think, really interesting. And the other very different area that we're excited about is the intersection of nanoscale fabrication, high-speed control, and biologics. So we're now able to make things at the scale of viral particles and cells. So we just recently installed a 3D printer that can print features down to 100 nanometers. So the combination of being able to essentially operate on single particles with high-speed sensing and control loops that are familiar from robotics allows us to do things that we couldn't before. And I'm really excited to see where this goes because, as I think Steve mentioned earlier, current biology is generally, to oversimplify, dump things in a pot and stir and hope for the best. And by allowing us to control these reactions, we can both achieve things we couldn't before and parallelize to a degree we couldn't before. We can create something that's 10,000 parallel channels, conduct 10,000 experiments in parallel to decrease the cost of collecting this data, but also turn around and manufacture 10,000 of these in parallel to increase overall throughput. So I think there's a lot of potential in that space as well. But with that, Mike, over here.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's certainly exciting, all the advancements in robotics and automation, but I also get excited about the new tools to train the workforce. So having been someone that was in those clean rooms in the past, I've worked on 4 approved cell therapies, and it was complex. You almost needed a PhD or an MD to actually manufacture those products in the past. So now with the foundation that we've laid in the industry and the curriculums that we have, and now the tools of whether it's digital twin technology or 3D glasses, and to be able to train the next generation of the workforce here in Pittsburgh and in Massachusetts, I think that's something that really excites us at Elevate Bio. It's all about the people and also the next generation of the workforce, that they can continue to innovate and take these therapies to the next level. Of course, cost of goods is important. Reducing time back to the patient is very important. But we're seeing that, the staff that we have coming up and growing up through the digital age, they're really thinking about solving problems in a different ways. So, now that the tools have advanced and we have that to provide to, anyone really, to train them to how to manufacture, develop, or test these complex therapies, I think that's really what is exciting us too as well.
Can I just, these are really cool. I want to say one other thing to kind of add on. One of the coolest examples we saw is, definitely agree, workforce 100%, and the AI convergence 100%. And one of the things that we saw is what AI is able to do related to biomanufacturing or manufacturing in general for biotechnology is it's bringing back old technologies for new purposes. So we saw a really cool example where all of a sudden a company was able to do really robust quality control of the production of a biologic through Raman spectroscopy, which is an old school not old school, but it's a type of spectroscopy that was only used for a very specific purpose and has since been, and with AI they were able to multiplex it and provide more in-depth information that was beyond what they previously could. So I think there's really neat stuff there. And I'll just say, on the non-pharmaceutical side of things, I think the applications of data, the data applications and AI applications are also proving to be really, really robust, especially as it relates to quality control, but then also processes that were typically very challenging previously for biology, like separations, for example, where people just didn't know how to do it. Like it becomes your huge bottleneck, and now it's they're able to incorporate AI methodologies to understand how best to accomplish this.
We're even seeing the FDA be more open to these new advanced technologies too, sort of, advanced manufacturing technology. You can go for a designation where it provides companies in early therapies to get more access and make it easier for them to implement these technologies. It's a path essentially that the FDA has opened up for these companies to have that assurance that the technology that they're incorporating has some robustness built around with it, and that the FDA has seen that technology is comfortable with it, and you can have that conversation openly with the FDA as a therapeutic company now. So it's great that the regulators are thinking about how to increase the adoption of new technology also.
Yeah, that's a great segue. I think in the audience today, we have a number of policymakers on both the state and federal side. So as we think about this industry, what are some of the biggest challenges that you all see that could be addressed by either investment or policy changes to really unlock the potential here? I'm going to open this up to everybody.
I'll jump in, and I'm kind of building on Mike's comment about the workforce. I think right now, today, we really need to lean into getting the best people and allowing the best people to come and study at the universities, get the knowledge that they really need in order to be that workforce for the future. And I think some of the challenges of some of the current administration's policies around immigration are a threat to that. And we really need to double down on allowing the best and the brightest to be here in the United States, studying here so that they can spin off the next company, make the next discovery, and get the knowledge that we have delivered to them so that they're equipped to do that.
I agree. I think beyond the human side of things, which is critical, one of the things that was a shock to me coming to the biotech industry last year was just the cost scale. It's frankly bonkers. My previous company, we were selling fully autonomous forklifts for the cost of a tabletop centrifuge, and they are not the same thing in any way, shape, or form in terms of R&D costs, cost of goods, cost of manufacturing. So, I mean, that's all the way up and down the supply chain. So that reduces the reach of companies by making everything more expensive and requiring a much larger investment. I alluded to earlier, when you have a risky process and you can only have one shot at it, that means that you don't take the big shots that could make a big difference to a large number of people but have a low probability of return. You try to be safer. And I think sort of the overall cost scale of the industry, which I'm sure hurts Mike far more than me, is from the outside a little crazy.
I think the incentives to stay in Pittsburgh as a company, a biotech company, we heard in the last session, technology that comes out of Pittsburgh, and I'm guilty of this. I actually worked for a company where the technology came out of the University of Pittsburgh. I spent 6 months here learning it, and then we took it back to Boston and built the company.
You're bringing it back.
But, right, exactly. So, no, again, University of Pittsburgh, the R.K. Mellon Foundation, Elevate Bio, we're doing our job to bring life science hub here from a development manufacturing, Bioforge as well. So now the technology and the great therapeutics that come out of the university, we'd love to see those companies stay here and thrive here. So I think incentives for biotech companies, and I know some exist, to stay in Pittsburgh and build those companies and again, thrive in this environment that we're building from a life science perspective is something would be fantastic.
I guess it's unfair to ask me a policy question. I have 50 policy recommendations that I would give to you for
Pick one.
For this current environment. But beyond the report, what I'll say is just to note that the commission is still around, and we will still exist until the end of 2026 to help ensure that these recommendations get implemented, but also continue to build. And I think one of the pieces of continuing to build is recognizing the current political environment and understanding how we as a commission can continue to be impactful. And one of those things is understanding that there's a propensity right now to shake things up. And so how do we ensure that we're shaking things up where it'll have a positive continued impact on science and biotechnology and AI for the continued future? And so that's one of our main goals right now, is to think through what that looks like, what recommendations and policy suggestions we can make moving forward, what information we can put out into the world for policymakers to continue those efforts and ensure that we see sort of a positive linear trajectory for science.
That's very helpful. And I think, we've talked a little bit about kind of Pittsburgh's role in all of this. Yesterday, we convened a roundtable with 5 multinationals, as well as the universities and the health systems, talking about AI and life sciences. And it was fascinating to me that all 5 of the multinationals have their AI Center of Excellence global here in Pittsburgh. So these big life sciences companies are seeing this as the place to develop their AI capabilities. And I think that plays into everything that you all are doing and building here. So, well, with that, this has been a fantastic panel. Really appreciate all of you taking the time today to be up here. And I think if we could give a round of applause for this group.